The beast had already torn through its third containment harness before the first-class bell rang. On the far side of the training yard, a steel plate the size of a small shuttle slid off the beast's back like a discarded leaf. The creature, 12 meters tall at the shoulder and covered in coarse, rust-colored bristles, snorted once and sent a gust of dust spiraling into the faces of the gathered students. Instructor Veen flared his neck sacs in frustration and turned to the cluster of young aliens trembling near the observational dome. I said approach with confidence, not fear. You're broadcasting anxiety. It can smell that. One of the students, a yellow-skinned Tharn named Kiv, took a hesitant step forward, holding a control rod that was shaking in his three-fingered grip. Maybe we should wait for the second wave of bindings, Kiv asked. The beast, as if understanding the hesitation, let out a guttural bellow and slammed a hoof the size of a hovercart into the ground. A deep tremor rolled through the compound. The containment field flickered. No, Veen said. You learn nothing from watching. Approach. Now, Kiv swallowed and took another step. Behind him, the others stayed well back, clutching their rods like security blankets. The training yard's observation deck was filled with chittering advisors and technical staff, all of them watching through reinforced glass. The beast's head swung low. Its eyes, black and wet like river stones, locked onto Kiv. Then it lunged. The ground thundered as it charged. Kiv screamed, flinging the control rod away and diving to the side. The rod sparked and skidded across the dirt. The beast ignored it, barreling past the student and straight toward the containment perimeter. Alarms blared, field integrity dropping. Someone shouted from the deck. Veen spun toward the technicians. Redirect power to Sector 5. Get that field back up before too late. The beast slammed into the invisible barrier, which sputtered and failed with a sound like a bubble popping. Its head burst through, followed by its massive shoulders. Panic erupted, students scattered. Some dropped their rods and ran. Others froze in place, eyes wide in disbelief. Veen cursed and activated his neural pacifier, but the beast was already tearing through the outer fencing with its tusks. And then it stopped. Just outside the breach, a tall figure stood, holding a small paper bag and a bottle of water. "Is that guy nuts?" whispered Kiv, crouched behind a storage crate. "Who authorized a civilian in the yard?" Veen barked. The figure, a man in dusty jeans and an old green jacket, took a slow step forward. The beast huffed and lowered its massive head toward him, nostrils flaring. The man didn't flinch. "Easy there," he said, voice calm but firm. "You don't want to do all this. You're just hungry, yeah." The beast blinked. The man reached into the paper bag and pulled out a sandwich, nothing fancy. Just peanut butter between two slices of bread. He held it up. "You like peanuts?" I got crunchy. "None of that smooth stuff." The beast sniffed. Then it took a step forward, cautiously. The man didn't move. "You're all right. You just need something in your belly before you go knocking down walls." Another step. The students watched, slack-jawed. The beast lowered its head. The man reached up and offered the sandwich. The creature's tongue, rough and gray like a slab of shale, wrapped delicately around the bread and pulled it in silence. Then the creature gave a low, contented grunt, curled its legs beneath it, and lay down. The yard was still. Veen made his way over, livid and bewildered. "Who in the name of the twin moons are you?" The man took a sip from his water bottle. "Name's Yates Zellman. I was told there was a job involving animal handling." Veen stared at him. "You walked into a breached containment zone. You bypassed 3 restricted checkpoints. That creature's a Class 8 terrestrial hybrid. It trampled a tank last week." Yates shrugged. "Didn't look like it wanted to trample me, looked hungry. So I figured I'd offer lunch before things got worse." "You fed a Class 8 hybrid." "A sandwich." "Yeah, crunchy peanut butter. Got it from the vending machine in the lobby." Veen looked like he was about to rupture something. "That beast is immune to standard pacification techniques. We've been cycling through command imprints, sonic anchors, even pheromonal dampeners." Yates glanced at the creature, which was now licking peanut butter off its tusks. "Looks like nobody tried just saying hi." The alien instructor turned to the students, who were now gathering nervously nearby. "Class, this is not protocol, this is not training, this is not science." The beast let out a happy grunt and rolled onto its side. Yates looked around at the mess. You got a mop or something? I think I stepped in something back there. Veen stared at him, then back at the beast. You're not trained in xenobiological control. Nope. You don't have a certification. Nope. Have you even read the handling manual? There was a manual. For a moment, no one said anything. Then Kiv stepped forward, still shaking. How? How did you know that would work? Yates looked at the young alien, then at the others. I didn't. But I've worked with spooked animals before. Doesn't matter what planet they're from. You get close without making them feel small. You talk soft. You offer something familiar. Food usually works. The students looked at each other. Veen folded his upper arms. You are not authorized to be here, Mr. Zellman. Understood, but I think your Class 8 is about 2 sandwiches away from a nap. Might be a good time to reinforce the enclosure. The beast let out a soft snore. Veen exhaled heavily. Fine. Since you're here, and since you've apparently pacified a creature our top students couldn't approach, you'll stay, but only under supervision. Yates nodded. Sounds fair. Mind if I bring more snacks tomorrow? We'll see. The next day, Yates showed up with a backpack full of fruit, a couple more sandwiches, and a folding chair. The students were already lined up along the training yard's edge, whispering and watching. The beast, now dubbed Gorlick by the students, was curled up in the corner of the yard, watching Yates approach. This time, Veen stood closer, arms crossed, waiting. Yates walked up to Gorlick and held out a peeled banana. Morning, big guy. This one's got potassium. Good for muscle cramps. Gorlick sniffed, then ate it whole. Kiv stepped forward again, holding a rod. Can I try? Yates looked at him. You nervous? A bit. Then don't walk like you're scared. Walk like you're carrying something important. Kiv nodded and approached slowly. Gorlick watched him but didn't rise. Yates handed the student a slice of melon. Offer it with your palm up. Kiv did as instructed. Gorlick leaned forward and gently took the fruit. The students gasped. Kiv stood in place, beaming. Veen's expression didn't change, but his neck sacs fluttered slightly. The training continued for the next week. One by one, the students approached Gorlick, each time under Yates' watchful eye. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but the beast never charged again. On the 8th day, one of the perimeter guards misfired a stun bolt during a systems check. The bolt struck Gorlick's flank. The creature reared up, screeching in pain. Yates was on his feet instantly, running straight toward the beast as others scrambled for cover. Gorlick, he shouted. Hey. Easy, it's all right. The beast stomped and whipped its head around. A trembling student tripped in the chaos, falling directly in the creature's path. Yates didn't hesitate. He dove forward, tackling the student and rolling them both out of the way. A massive hoof slammed down inches from his leg. The impact sent a shockwave through the ground. Yates felt something give in his side. Pain flared up instantly. Gorlick turned, still panicked. Yates pulled himself up to one knee, grimacing. Easy, big guy, he gasped. You're okay, it was an accident. The creature's breathing slowed. Yates reached into his jacket and pulled out the last sandwich. Still got your favorite, crunchy. He held it out with a shaky hand. The beast sniffed, then cautiously stepped forward and took it. Its eyes softened. Yates exhaled, then he collapsed. Veen rushed over as medical staff poured into the yard. 2 technicians lifted Yates onto a stretcher. Left ribs are likely fractured, one said. Get him to med bay now. Yates groaned as they carried him past Gorlick, who let out a low, confused sound. I'm all right, Yates muttered. Just. Don't let him blame himself. X-rays confirmed 3 cracked ribs, bruised lungs, and a torn shoulder tendon. Yates was put on a strict recovery plan and confined to a low-gravity bed for the next 6 weeks. Veen visited once during the 3rd week. You were reckless, he said, standing at the foot of the bed. Yeah, Yates replied. That's kind of my thing, but effective. Yates looked at the ceiling. You gonna kick me off the project? No. In fact, the students have requested you be formally added as a training consultant. Yates turned his head. Seriously, you demonstrated something we were missing. What's that? Empathy. Yates smiled weakly. That and peanut butter. Veen's neck sacs fluttered again. I'll have someone bring your things to the observation dome when you're out of bed. As he left, Yates closed his eyes and let out a breath. 6 weeks later, he stood once again in the training yard, a little slower, bandaged under his shirt, holding a banana in one hand. Gorlick lumbered over and lowered his head. You still like these? Yates asked. The beast licked his hand. Kiv and the other students stood nearby, watching quietly. Yates turned to them. All right. Who's next? Kiv stepped forward, holding a melon slice. Me. Yates nodded. Then walk like it matters. By the 12th rotation since the incident, Yates could walk from the observation dome to Gorlick's enclosure without favoring his side too obviously, though he still moved like someone who'd learned to respect the limits of cartilage. The wrapped joint in his shoulder clicked faintly with every full stride, which annoyed him more than the pain ever had. The students were already assembled in a semicircle near the inner fence when he arrived, most of them standing atop hexagonal stepping platforms that wobbled slightly with each shift in weight. It was a new part of their curriculum, building balance under pressure. Veen had introduced it as a way to simulate physical instability in negotiation zones. Yates was unconvinced. Gorlick was curled against the far corner of the yard, chewing on something leathery and, judging by the smell, once edible. The dirt around him was littered with the remains of enrichment puzzles, most of which had been solved by force. Yates set his bag down just outside the gate and pulled a folded tarp over it to keep the sun off the fruit inside. All right, he said, rotating his shoulder slowly. Who's going in today? No one answered. The Tharn twins exchanged glances and both looked at Kiv. Kiv looked down at his feet. Didn't we agree to rotate? Yates asked. Kiv scratched behind his crest. We did. But Ruck says he's still integrating the neurometrics from last cycle, and I'm technically still on post-recovery protocol. Yates said. So we're skipping turns now. Is that how your species handles shared responsibility? It's not cultural, Kiv said quickly. It's just. He got into the puzzle box yesterday, without breaking it. Yates glanced at Gorlick, who was now snuffling at a torn rubber cylinder with what might have once been a handle. Yeah, Yates said. So, it means he's learning, which means he's adapting. Which means, Kiv hesitated, he might not respond the same way twice. Welcome to working with anything smarter than a rock, Yates said. You think toddlers follow scripts, but he's not a toddler, Ruck said. He's stronger than our transport launcher and has 6 separate jaw hinges. Yates pulled a soft cloth from his jacket pocket and began wiping dirt off a piece of fruit. Look, he said, you're not going in there to test his bite radius. You're going in there to say hi, offer something decent, and pay attention. If he reacts different, so do you. Ruck's antennae drooped slightly. And if he forgets we're the ones bringing snacks, then you remind him, Yates said. With tone, space, posture, just don't run. He doesn't like that. Veen's voice came through the intercom from above. Mr. Zellman, I'd prefer if you didn't understate the risks. Yates looked up at the observation window. I'd prefer if you didn't hover like a disappointed ant. There was a pause. Then faintly, a few of the students laughed. Yates turned back to the group. All right, we'll make it simple. No platform training today, just walking, offering, and reading cues. Ruck, you're up. Ruck groaned, but stepped off the platform and adjusted the strap on his supply pouch. He approached the gate with the gait of someone trying to appear confident while mentally composing a will. Yates opened the inner fence, keeping a hand on the panel. Stay slow, no direct eye contact until he gives you the look. You'll know it when you see it. Ruck nodded and entered. The gate sealed behind him with a soft hiss. The yard was hot and smelled faintly of singed grass. Gorlick shifted as Ruck approached, but didn't rise. His tail thumped once against the ground, sending up a puff of dust. Ruck paused, then took a small cylinder from his pouch. He twisted the cap and a sweet, citrusy scent wafted out. Gorlick's ears twitched. That's it, Yates said quietly, eyes focused. Now half step right, keep your shoulders open. Ruck did as instructed and extended the treat. Gorlick raised his head slowly, nostrils flaring. He didn't move further. Say something, Yates muttered. Ruck cleared his throat. This is a fermented shell fruit. The internal sugars are partially crystallized. You might enjoy the texture. Gorlick blinked. Yates sighed. Try using fewer syllables than a treaty clause. Ruck hesitated, then tried again. It's sweet. You'll like it. Gorlick's head tilted. Then he stepped forward slowly and took the treat from Ruck's hand. This time his tongue grazed the back of Ruck's wrist deliberately. It seemed. Ruck froze. Good, Yates said. Stay loose. That's how he memorizes scent markers. Gorlick chewed thoughtfully, then lowered his head and nudged Ruck's side with the flat of his snout. Ruck stumbled back a step but managed not to fall. "Okay," Yates said. "Back up now, same pace. Don't turn until you reach the gate." Ruck obeyed, and once he was through, the rest of the students let out a collective breath. That, Yates said, was progress. Kiv looked impressed. He remembered the last time Ruck gave him a treat, or, Yates said, he liked the smell of Ruck's sweat. "Either way, it's a reference point," Veen's voice returned. "Behavioral patterning is stabilizing faster than projected. We may need to reevaluate the cognitive baselines." "I told you he's not a brute," Yates said without looking up. "You treat something like a problem long enough, it starts acting like one." Later that evening, Yates sat alone on the bench outside the medbay, rotating a cold pack between his shoulder and his ribs. The stars were just starting to show, faint pinpricks against the amber sky. His shirt clung to his back with the kind of humidity that made him miss frozen winters. The door hissed open, and a young technician stepped out holding a tablet. "They updated your scan. Cartilage is healing, but you're still showing inflammation around the labrum." Yates nodded. "Feels like someone stuffed a hot screwdriver under my collarbone." She tapped something in the tablet. "You're cleared for light strain, but they don't want you lifting anything heavier than 5 kilograms for another 8 days. "I'll limit myself to bananas," he said. She gave him a curious look. "You're not like the others, because I don't blink sideways. No, because you don't act like you're trying to impress anyone. I'm too sore to posture." He stood slowly, wincing as his shoulder caught halfway up. The technician offered a hand, but he waved it off gently. "I got it. Thanks." He made his way back to the yard under the dim perimeter lights. Gorlick was still awake, head resting on his forelimbs, eyes half-lidded. Yates leaned against the fence, careful not to press his ribs. "You know," he said softly, "you're making me look like I know what I'm doing." Gorlick let out a low rumble. "I'm not sure if that's a compliment or a warning." Behind him, soft footsteps approached. Kiv stood there, holding a small bundle. "I made these," he said, unwrapping it. "Protein slivers with root glaze. I read that your species eats on intervals." Yates took one, sniffed it, and bit off a corner. "Not bad. I didn't put any of the stimulant compound. I wasn't sure if you metabolize alkaloids the same way." "I appreciate that," Yates said, chewing carefully. "I once had a reaction to something called virol root on a transport ship. Spent 6 hours thinking I was inside my own lungs." Kiv blinked slowly. "That sounds unpleasant, mostly confusing. The air smelled like fish." Kiv sat down beside him, hands clasped. "You don't act surprised when Gorlick does something new. He's supposed to, but we're taught to expect patterns. Patterns help you survive, but they don't help you understand." Kiv looked toward the yard. Gorlick was now fully stretched out, tail flicking. "Do you think he likes us?" "I think he's waiting to see if you respect him. That's different from liking." Yates stood again, stretching gingerly. "But he's not pushing you away." "That's something." As they walked back toward the dome, Kiv asked, "What happens if we finish the course and he still doesn't trust us?" "Then you keep showing up," Yates said. "Trust doesn't come with a certificate." Kiv was quiet for a moment. "Then, you never asked why we needed him trained." Yates gave him a sidelong glance. "Didn't need to. You don't build a program this expensive just to keep a pet. So you don't mind being used. I mind being lied to. But I figure if I do my part right, he gets treated better than he would have otherwise." Kiv nodded slowly. "That's oddly optimistic." "No," Yates said, "it's just practical. Empathy makes things work smoother. Doesn't mean I trust the people funding this." They reached the dome. Yates held the door open for Kiv, then paused before following. "Hey," he said. "Thanks for the root slivers." Kiv gave a small motion of acknowledgement, then disappeared inside. Yates lingered for a moment, looking back toward the yard. Gorlick was still watching. The sun had barely crested the eastern ridge when Yates arrived at the yard, his pace slower than usual, but steady. His joints still ached in the mornings, especially the shoulder, but he'd learned to stretch before leaving his bunk and to swing the arm gently until it felt more like his and less like a borrowed part. The dirt was still cool underfoot, and dew clung to the lower fencing in soft beads, catching the first light like tiny lenses. Gorlick was already upright, gnawing lazily on a water barrel he'd dragged from the corner during the night. Shreds of polymer hung from his tusks like festive ribbons. Yates stopped at the gate and rested both hands on the frame. "You know that was the last one, right?" Gorlick huffed through his nostrils but didn't look away from the mutilated barrel. "You're lucky the quartermaster's afraid of you, or we'd both be eating compressed starch for a week." From behind him, footsteps crunched over gravel. Yates turned to see Tella, the married student whose scales shifted color with her mood. Today, they were a soft gray-blue, like overcast seawater. "I brought the new enrichment module," she said, holding a cube wrapped in thermal mesh. "It's supposed to release scent trails when compressed." "Let me guess," Yates said. "Citrus and trell root." Tella glanced at the cube, "and something called cinnamon." Yates raised an eyebrow. "You got cinnamon into the requisition list." There was a loophole in the import regulations. Technically, it's filed as a bark-based preservative. He chuckled and reached for the cube, then stopped halfway. "Actually, you take it in." Tella's scales darkened slightly. "Me? You've been watching him more than anyone the last few cycles. You notice shifts better than I do. Time to test if he notices you," she hesitated. "He's never directly approached me." "Then either he doesn't see you as a threat or doesn't see you at all." "Either way, that's our baseline." Teller wrapped the cube tighter and walked toward the gate. Yates keyed it open and watched her step inside, each movement deliberate. Gorlick paused his chewing and tilted his head. "I'm not food," she said calmly. "And this is not a trick." She crouched, placed the cube down, then stood up and stepped back without turning. Gorlick ambled over, sniffed once, then pushed the cube with his snout. A faint hiss escaped as one of the scent chambers activated. His eyes widened slightly. "He likes it," Tella said, her voice low. "Good," Yates said. "Now step back to the fence. Steady." She walked backward, posture upright, and exited the yard without incident. Her scales brightened subtly as she exhaled. "That was better than expected," Yates said. "You didn't lock up once." "I ran simulations last night, based on his movement logic. Simulations don't prepare you for the smell," he said, "or the noise when he chews." Tella's scales flushed a faint green. "It's worse than I thought. Imagine hearing that outside your tent at night." She looked at him. "You camped near him, not on purpose. He broke through a habitat wall last month. I woke up with his nose in my sock bag." Veen's voice hummed through the intercom. "Zellman. Briefing in 20 minutes. You're required." Yates sighed. "I'm guessing it's not about expanding snack rations." "No," he turned to Tella. "You up for watching him while I sit through whatever this is?" She nodded. "He seems calm. Let's hope he stays that way." Yates arrived at the command dome just as the hall lights shifted to mid-morning brightness. Inside, the air was cooler, filtered clean of yard dust and beast smell. The room's main table was already occupied by Veen, two logistics coordinators, and an unfamiliar tall figure in diplomatic gray. The stranger stood as Yates entered. "Mr. Zellman, I'm Envoy Rallying. I represent the Oversight Council." Yates didn't sit. Council usually sends memos. "Not bodies." Rallying gestured to a chair. "Please." Yates took the seat closest to the wall, favoring his right side. "You've been working with the hybrid subject for over 9 cycles now," Rallying said. "Your methods are unorthodox but statistically effective." "Is this about results or style?" "That depends," Rallying replied. "Do you intend to continue treating the subject as a companion?" Yates blinked. "He's not a pet, if that's what you're asking." "Then clarify. Is he a training tool, a biological asset, or something else?" "He's a sentient organism with pain memory, food preference, and a working sense of humor." "What's your category for that?" Rallying didn't answer. Veen leaned forward. "We're nearing the end of Phase 2. The Council needs to determine asset viability for off-world deployment." Yates's jaw tightened. "You're planning to ship him?" "Only if he demonstrates stable behavior under transport conditions," Rallying said. "Your bond with the subject complicates that. So my job was to make him manageable, but not too manageable. We didn't anticipate emotional imprinting," Veen said. "He's an intelligent animal who responds to kindness. That's not imprinting. That's how relationships work. We can't guarantee he'll react the same to unfamiliar handlers. Then send someone willing to sit across from him and wait." Rallying folded their hands. "That's not scalable. Neither is rebuilding a containment yard every time you scare him." Silence stretched across the table. Finally, Veen spoke again. We need to know if he'll follow basic commands from someone else. Yates looked at the table. And if he doesn't, then we proceed with alternative containment protocols. Yates stood. He's not a package. You can't just box him up and hope he doesn't notice. Rallian's tone remained flat. You have until the end of the cycle to demonstrate transferable compliance. Otherwise, Phase 3 is initiated. Yates walked out without another word. By the time he returned to the yard, the sun had shifted westward and the shadows were longer. Gorlick was asleep, tail draped over the crushed remains of the scent cube. Tella sat nearby, sketching something on a flexible slate. You look angry, she said without looking up. Briefing was a waste of words. They want obedience with a side of silence. They're scared of him. They're scared of what he means. That's something that Massive might not want to be controlled. Tella tapped her stylus against the slate. Can he learn voice commands? He knows them. He just chooses when to respond. Then maybe it's not about obedience. Maybe he needs a reason. Yates crouched beside the fence and watched Gorlick's tail twitch. I think he just wants to know he won't be punished for thinking. Tella's scales shimmered a pale gold. That's rare. Too rare, Yates said. But maybe not impossible. That evening, Yates stood inside the yard while the students watched. Gorlick was alert but calm. Yates held out a hand, palm up. Stay, Gorlick blinked. Stay, Yates repeated, stepping back slowly. The beast didn't move. Now, Yates said, come. Gorlick rose all 12 meters of him and walked forward 3 steps, then stopped. Yates turned to the students. Anyone else want to try? Tella stepped forward, voice steady. Stay, Gorlick didn't budge. Come, he approached, slower this time, and stopped just short of the fence. Yates nodded. That's a pattern. By the end of the cycle, every student had issued a command. Gorlick responded to each, not always perfectly, but deliberately. No aggression, no hesitation, just choice. Rallying returned the next day, expression unreadable. We've reviewed the footage, they said. The council has voted to suspend Phase 3. Yates leaned against the fence, arms crossed, so he stays. For now. But the council reserves the right to reassess. You always do. Rallying turned to leave, then paused. He trusts you? Yates nodded, and I trust him. After the envoy departed, Yates walked back into the yard. Gorlick was lying on his side, eyes half closed. Yates sat down beside him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his hide. No one's shipping you anywhere, he said. Not while I'm breathing. Gorlick let out a low, contented rumble. Yates pulled a folded sandwich from his jacket and set it gently between them, still crunchy. You earned it.